All right, let's get cooking. Welcome to the latest edition of Chin Check Sports Radio. I'm your host, JD. I want to thank you all for taking the time out to join us. And as always, we welcome any suggestions, feedback, comments, and criticisms, which improves the quality of our program, which ultimately improves your listening experience. Before we get started on this particular broadcast, we want to send you all our well wishes during the current pandemic of COVID-19. We know that this is a very trying and stressful time for every one of us, and let us continue to do our part by practicing the safety protocols, by wearing our masks, practicing social distancing, as well as washing our hands frequently to slow the spread of this virus. And if we at Chin Check Radio can serve as a distraction with everything that's going on, that's something that we will continue to do. Also, thank you for your tremendous support. It seems that, again, we're a slow-growing program, and we're simply sharing our opinions with the world. People love what we're talking about. They love our passion. They love our energy. They love our topics. So some people just really do what we have to say, and we thank you so much. But we thank you tremendously. And sometimes we definitely get humbled by that when folks send us messages and we hear, or they might have passed the content to a friend and then they reach out to us. So we are definitely grateful for your support, and we'll continue to bring you quality programming. Now, if you're looking at your screen, you clearly see we are a little bit different from what we usually talk about. Now, we at Chin Check Radio are a sports program. We were created to be a sports program. We wanted to share our love with professional sports. Of course, we also talked about issues in professional sports, especially in regards to race. Some things that we feel that the mainstream media tends to talk about or really ignore. And we really just wanted to bring our opinion or to look at things different from the mainstream sports media. So that's why we created this program. So no point in complaining about the mainstream media where we say, you know what, or the mainstream sports media, let's create our own platform to kind of not really balance things out, but to give people a different perspective. Now, we've been sitting on this program as a black man and seeing and offering our opinions about how black men are viewed in 2020 and really during this presidential election, because obviously we have elected a new president. And this program is a not talk about politics. We're not that kind of program, even though we do have political opinions and we feel comfortable talking politics, but just not on this platform because we are mainly a sports platform. So we're not talking about if you chose Trump, if you chose Biden, and why. We're not here to get into that. We're here to get into the fake love and the real outrage for black men in the year 2020. And that's what we're going to harp on in this particular program. The fake love, but the real outrage and anger and vitriol towards black men. And it's something that bothered me, and it's something that we've been sitting on this for a while, and we feel now's the time to talk about it because it can't be more obvious than the way it is now. Now, let's go back to what prompted all of this. George Floyd. Now, even going back, we have talked about issues in race and sports. And if you go back and look at so-called sins of the black father, we have touched on those issues where black fathers of professional athletes are criticized in the way that they're criticized for raising their sons and being strong black men, and they're almost demonized and villainized in the mainstream media, or at least the mainstream sports media. We've done shows on social justice, weekend warriors, which we're also going to tie some of that in to what we're talking about tonight. So we've already touched on these things, but let's go back to the George Floyd incident in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Now again, we at Chin Check Radio, we're going to give it to you the real. Of course, when the first video came out, it talked, everybody was in an outrage. We sent out a tweet expressing our concerns about what happened, and that sparked protests all over America. Unfortunately, when the reality of it came out, or the narrative was, Police just ran up on George Floyd for no reason, threw him to the ground, they put his knee on his neck, and they killed him. And everybody bought that narrative. Then a little thing called the truth started coming out, when in fact he did commit a crime. You can say passing a counterfeit bill is not a violent crime, but it's still a crime nonetheless. Passing a counterfeit bill. He's driving a vehicle while he's in the driver's seat of a vehicle. They have him step out the vehicle, clearly swallows some type of pill. Have him step out the vehicle. They're very patient, they're very nice with him. And it showed everything they could possibly do. He didn't want to get in the car, saying he was claustrophobic, even though he was in the car already. He said he was going to get down on the ground, which he found that funny. They didn't throw him to the ground. He said he was going to get down on the ground. And the officers, using a technique that they're actually trained to use, they put his knee on his neck. Now you can argue, should the knee have been kept there that long? That's debatable. Some people say yes, some people say no. But then, obviously the man died. Now, may he rest in peace, but George Floyd was a simple drug addict who was on drugs, and his body was full of fentanyl. Yes, I said it. Now, the problem was it became an issue about race, saying that, well, it was a race issue and the officers did it to a black man and it was a race issue. But then when you saw the entire video, then it wasn't really a race issue anymore. It was more of a possible training issue or a poor defensive tactics issue. So the first argument, where you have protests all over America and quite frankly all over the world, and now the world has just discovered black people in America for some reason, all of a sudden now the whole narrative changed to, well, it was George Floyd and the police are just killing black people. And we're going to get to the real stats in a minute, and everybody jump on the George Floyd bandwagon, where there's an old saying, by the time a lie travels around the world, the truth is just getting the shoes on. So unfortunately, this narrative that prosecutors in Minneapolis sat on, the body-worn cameras that folks sat on, showed that this man was not grabbed out of his car for any reason. He was not thrown to the ground. He was not beaten. Hell, even the people who he was with told him to calm down and relax, and the fact that he was acting a plumb fool, clearly under the influence of some type of drugs, and unfortunately the man died. Wasn't a hero, wasn't anybody to be having a gold casket on, and he pretty much sparked all these protests about racial and social injustice. But what I found funny was during the Obama administration, or during the time that Barack Obama was elected president, all of a sudden we were living in a post-racial society, because I remember reading articles about that, how it was a post-racial society. We have gone past racism. We've elected the first black president, and now there's no racism in America. But now all of a sudden, 4 years later, it's such a racist system and everything. And we need to deconstruct America from the bottom up. So going back to the George Floyd incident, that pretty much was built on one lie, because the issue was, if you notice with most people in these protests, they have been moving the goalposts from one end to the other. Or I like to say, moving the goalposts with rocket skates on. The first argument was the man was beaten because he was black. Police threw him to the ground and they put his knee on his neck because he was black. When they showed the whole video of the way he was acting a plumb fool and the way how they were very patient with him, so clearly it probably wasn't a race issue. It was maybe a poor training issue or a defensive tactics issue. If any of those are familiar with law enforcement, the way they train and, putting people in handcuffs and restraining people, that's what they call defensive tactics or control tactics. So the fact that the video showed the whole story, now all of a sudden people have to change that narrative. Well, and that's not really a race issue, it's probably a training issue. But then nobody talked about a guy by the name of Tony Tiempa, a white guy. Similar situation, it wasn't an issue there. So that kind of threw away that argument about, quote, race being involved. So then the argument came about systematic racism and systematic oppression. Let's jump into the Breonna Taylor case. That was another case that people jumped on. First, the argument was police didn't have a warrant. They had the wrong house. They didn't have a warrant. They had the wrong house. So again, the argument kept shifting until the truth came out, where as detailed everything that she was involved in, from the car that she rented, I was involved in a homicide. You could say, okay, She didn't know that, but if you look at documents that her vehicle was involved in drug transactions, her apartment was there, the boyfriend shot first. Actually, the boyfriend told the police on scene that she actually shot at the police. So facts be damned, everybody jumped on this bandwagon. Again, a so-called social and racial injustice. So again, you're finding out that the things that people uprise for was pretty much based on lies. We lost a Washington Redskins football team behind it. You had people tearing down Confederate statues, which I don't have a problem with that. If you want to tear down Confederate statues and rename high schools and tear down statues of King Leopold, I don't have a problem with that. But then, as we talked about on a previous broadcast, all of a sudden, you start tearing statues down, of Frederick Douglass, one of the greatest men to ever walk this planet. You're tearing down statues of firefighters a statue of firefighters who gave their lives during the September 11 attacks. So when does it start? People out in the West Coast grabbing people out of their homes and setting up all these different areas. And it was just bad. So pretty much all the, quote, civil and social unrest was built on carefully constructed lies of a man who was a damn junkie. Yes, I said it. And a woman who was a criminal who was, quote, about that life or was part of that life and suffered the consequences for being a part of that life. Now, all of a sudden, so the two main things that people rioted and protested and destroyed cities on, which, oh, by the way, in the black community, those businesses will not come back. Ask what happened in Ferguson. So you have businesses in major cities who are refusing to come back because of the damage that was done, where they're going to take their insurance money and they're cashing out of town, which is going to further impoverish and affect black people. See, but folks don't think about that. So we've had instances where two people, where it wasn't this whole big race thing that people talk about. And even before the Breonna Taylor case, there was another white guy. And for life of me, I can't think of his name. And a good friend of mine, she always texts me the guy's name. And I'm probably going to ask her again. Similar situation, police serving a warrant, and deadly force was used. Nobody talked about that. So it wasn't a race issue then. So what's the real argument here? So again, people jumped on these narratives. So then the narrative became, well, police are just out here, they're just executing black people. Okay, they're just slaughtering black folks. And black folks just ran on it. They were talking about defunding the police and taking money away from the police and let's take this money from the police and let's move this to all these social service programs that benefits people. Folks, if you Google a story in Atlanta, Georgia, they had a story that there was a program. This is even before all the defund the police talk. There was Atlanta had a federal grant, a program that was meant to train people, to give them job training and to teach them skills and life skills and education. And according to the rules on the criteria of the grant, you're supposed to have X amount of people trained up. And I believe they only trained, I'm going to say out of the years they had, the money was about 4 or 5 people. And it was bad. And that's a $4 million grant that the city of Atlanta lost of federal money for the same things that people talk about, that we can allot certain money from the police budget and move it to social service programs to build this better utopia where you wouldn't need police. The problem when you defund police, like New York City found out, LAPD found out, or the sheriffs found out, when you defund police, you have less police, especially policing black neighborhoods. And this is something that white liberals were screaming for, because for some reason white liberals think this is an episode of Damn Different Strokes, where they want to adopt some little pet Negroes and they want to take care of black folks. So some of that white liberals were pushing that agenda that black folks unfortunately jumped on about defunding the police. When you defund the police, you're taking the police out of black neighborhoods, and guess what? Now your crime is skyrocketing, because in places, and not even talking about Chicago, that's a given. Places like Atlanta, New York, LA, most St. Louis, most major cities, ever since the police have been defunded and you've taken money away, which subsequently is a domino effect about hiring new officers, that's a problem. As you see in Minneapolis, Minnesota, a lot of their officers, I believe 200 and some of the officers have now resigned or retired from that job out of the 800. There you go. That's what, if my math is correct, about a quarter of the department has left. Now the crime is skyrocketing. The same Minneapolis City Council who voted to abolish or dismantle the police, now all of a sudden he's singing a whole different tune now because the city's going up in flames. So folks didn't think where folks thought on an emotional level to appease the public. And now guess what? Now the bill is due. Now the chickens are coming home to roost. So the same Minneapolis City Council who voted to abolish police are now going on record saying that we made a poor decision and now we don't understand why crime is going up. Folks, 1 + 1 still equals 2. In New York City, you have council members and different activists who are now saying, well, we might have made a poor decision because one of the units that was defunded or disbanded in New York City was a type of unit, a plainclothes unit, I believe, that their job is to get guns and criminals off the street. The fact that you have abolished that unit or disbanded that unit or broke the unit up, now all of a sudden your gun crimes and your homicides are surging. In the city of Atlanta, where you have a mayor who was openly critical of her police, now all of a sudden her homicide rate is going up and she's really trying to understand why the homicide rate is going up. So again, this is something that they use black folks, and unfortunately black folks bought into this nonsense about trying to defund the police based on that police this narrative that police are out here just killing black folks. Now folks, here are some real numbers for you. And folks, by all means, y'all can look this up. In America, there is about, they say, anywhere between 350 million people in America. 350, 360. So we'll just round down. We'll say 350 million people in America. Out of the 350 million people in America, police use deadly force starting from 2015 when this evidence was first tracked. Now, do not tell me what happened in the 1930s or the 1940s because it didn't become an issue until Mike Brown, and that was 2014. So when it was first tracked in 2015, the total number of people shot and killed by the police in the United States of America, out of the 350 million people in 2015, was 994. So y'all get your pen and paper out. Let's break down the truth. 994 people in 2015 total were shot and killed by the police. Now, out of the 44 million black people in America, they say 44 million, as you would say, roughly around 30% of the population. So let's say out of the 40, hell, I'll even round down. Out of the 40 million black people in America, 258 were shot and killed by the police. Now, 258 out of 44 million people. 258 out of the 994 people that were shot and killed. Oh, by the way, whites were 498. In 2016, 961 people were shot and killed by the police. Again, that's out of a population of 350 million. I can even go deeper to say that police encounter about 100 million people a year. So 961 people shot and killed by the police in 2016. Out of that number, 234 are black, 469 are white. In 2017, 986 total people shot and killed by the police, 224 black, 461 white. In 2018, 990 people out of the 350 million people, again, that's rounding down, out of the 350 million people in America, 990 were shot and killed by the police, 229 black, 456 white. 2019, 999 total, 250 black, 404 white. And I can really bring up, and hell, for argument's sake, in the year 2020, 821 people, 158 black, 313 white. So this narrative that police are just out here just executing black folks is one big damn lie. And I'm going to get to the fake love in a minute. Now, folks, these numbers that I gave you in 2015, 16, 17, 18, and 19, if you add up and average out the black people that were shot and killed by the police, that averages out to roughly 239 people a year. If you divide 239 by 44 million people, folks, that is 0.0000005%. Let me say it again. If you average out the numbers that I just gave you, watch out, you're gonna come up with from add up 258, 238, 224, 229, and 250. You add those up and divide those by 5. You're going to get 239. You divide 239 by 44 million, that is 0.00005%. What systematic problem is there with police using deadly force? The numbers just don't support it. The numbers just don't support it. It's a lie that people have been fed and people have bought this hook, line, and sinker. I've talked about this on a previous program that I've spent months when I tell people facts and truths. People want to tell me, well, this is how I feel. That is the dumbest argument that you can bring this to a logical argument. I'm telling you facts, numbers, and truths, and you're telling me about how you feel, and this the world that we live in. So let's just dispel all that garbage right now. So again, on the average, 239 black people out of 44 million population. And I just gave the numbers that police actually shoot and kill more whites than blacks. And I know some dummies gonna say, well, there's actually more whites in America and blacks by higher percentage are shot and killed. Yeah, that's called proportion. That's pretty much basic arithmetic when you're in school. Yes. If the numbers are here, but you have a lower population, yes. Per population, or what they call per capita, that's how crime is decided in major cities, yes, per size. But the reality of it is the numbers of black people shot and killed by the police are relatively low compared to the rest of the population of black people in America. That's the bottom line. So you cannot argue with these facts. Then people came with a bright idea in which they told black folks that black folks can police themselves. And we don't need the police. Well, a funny thing happened on the way to that, where in Seattle they created a Chaz zone or Chop zone, or they took over a police precinct, and the mayor and the old police chief, well, I'm going to put that on the mayor, she didn't do anything and let them take over this Chop zone. Well, I remember there was a black man who was killed in the Chop zone, and when police tried to go help this black man, they were forced out by the protesters. And then the guy's father then tried to blame the police by saying the police didn't do anything to help his son, even though the video showed the police trying to help his son and being forced out by the protesters, and his son making a clear and obvious choice to join the protesters, and he ended up getting killed inside this Chop zone in the city of Atlanta. God bless the men and women of the Atlanta Police Department who, in the face of their own injustice, decided to give people what they wanted. The Atlanta Police Department decided to, you know what, we're going to exercise some version of a blue flu or mass sick out or mass mental health day, and they gave the public what they wanted when you said, we don't need the police, we don't want the police, and they gave you what you wanted. And the reality sunk in for a lot of people that, wait a minute, we don't have police. And by the way, that was national news. That was on CNN. It was on Fox News. It was on MSNBC. That was national news. So God bless the men and women of the Atlanta Police Department who made a stand for themselves. And people found out that when they called the police that night, they were not coming. And now people are laying in bed trying to pull a blanket over their head. And folks was not coming. That's a hard reality that people had to find out. And I don't understand why more cities didn't do something like that. If you didn't want the police around, that's fine. But there's no reason not to give you what you want. Now, all of a sudden, when the police did not go to work for a couple of days and you're left by yourself and you're trying to figure out how am I going to conduct if something happens, who's going to come save me, all of a sudden our attitudes start changing. All of a sudden, come back to work. All of a sudden, we didn't mean this. So again, in black neighborhoods, when police did not go to work, again, it's black neighborhoods who were affected by this. And unfortunately, when people sat there and they said that we can police ourselves and we don't need the police around, all of a sudden now you're picking up bodies of children. Yes, I said it. When you decided to police yourselves, and black people fortunately bought into this narrative from, quote, white liberals and the mainstream media that use social workers and all these other people and all these other people instead of trained police. When the police decided to pull out of the neighborhood and give people what they wanted, all of a sudden you're picking up bodies of children, and now politicians alike all have blood on their hand from the deaths of these children. And we spoke about this on a previous broadcast. Go back and review Social Justice Weekend Warriors Part 2. So those are some of the things that's been going on. Some of this stuff that's been coming down on people, and these are some of the issues that we have now. Kind of moving along. This goes back to what I talked about on the first Social Justice Weekend Warrior. The fake outrage and the so-called, and I was talking about fake outrage and real vitriol towards black men. Now, black women. And a combination of black feminists. Now, before I get emails and phone calls, this is not all black women. It's not. I can make an argument. This doesn't apply. Out of 10 black women, this probably doesn't apply to about 6 of you. So I know there's a lot of quality, beautiful, educated, sweet, lovely, warm, genuine, caring, rod of black women who is going to be listening to this program. And again, and I know this probably does not pertain to you. It really doesn't. So please don't call, email, text me, phone a friend to say, I can't believe you talked about me. No, this is not about the majority of you. But I am going to call you out. Unfortunately, the loud version of you or the very minor version. So again, you give me about 10 black women, this probably doesn't apply to about 6 or 7 of you. But the one who this does apply to, you're going to catch some of the wrath. Now, a black woman and a black feminist, especially the minority of black women, have zero respect for a black man. I'll say it again. Have zero respect for a black man. Why you say that, Chin Check? Because here's why. It only seemed that black women, again, the very few that I'm talking about, and the feminists were only jumping on the police are bad, killing black men narrative because it was a cool thing to do. But any other time, they'll be the first ones to cuss a black man out in the middle of the street. While everybody talks about Karens and Karen laws and white women calling the police on black men, you know who else calls the police on black men? Other black women that people don't talk about. And I find it funny that now, all of a sudden in the year 2020, black women are, the police are just shooting up all our men and they're killing all our black men and we don't want to see another black man die. You sure about that? Because I want to go back to 2010, I believe, or 2009, 2010. Google former Tennessee Titans Super Bowl quarterback, former Baltimore Ravens quarterback, Steve McNair, who was shot and killed by his mistress, who I believe was a non-black woman. I forget her ethnicity. And he was shot and killed by his mistress, where she shot and killed him first, and then she shot herself. And there were a large swarm of black women who stated, and I'm paraphrasing here, he got what he deserved. So in 2010 or 2009 or 2010, a lot of black women sat there, again, this is for the few of you who, and you know who I'm talking about, who said he deserved what he got. So a black man being killed by his mistress was okay, but junkies on drugs in the middle of the street, a woman involved in criminal activity, other people involved in criminal activity is shot and killed, all of a sudden you love your black man, even though the numbers state that, it is what it is. So now all of a sudden you love your black men in the year 2020, but again, you'll cuss a black man out in the street. You celebrated a black man being killed by his mistress. You'll call the police on a black man, but all of a sudden, when there's police involved, all of a sudden you love your black men. Folks, I'm even going to go back to 2008. I'm probably going to piss a lot of you off when I say this, but guess what? It's going to have to. Remember when Barack Obama was running for the presidency and he was in the primaries against Hillary Clinton? Folks, go back and look at the numbers. The majority of black women who voted against Barack Obama and voted for Hillary Clinton. Now, let's go back in time. Let's put things in the proper context. Majority of sisters back then said that, well, it's a shame that, our good black men are moving on and they're marrying white women and we don't agree with that and that's not right and that's a shame. So here you go. Here you have a black man married to a black woman, and a lot of black women voted for Hillary Clinton over Barack Obama in those Democratic primaries in 2008. Folks, go look it up. And I know that's a sore spot for a lot of women. But again, this is why I'm calling certain sisters out. When it was a cool thing to do in 2020, oh, you jumped on Black Lives Matter, we love black men and stuff like that. Bull jive. I'm going to just call it for what it is. I remember talking with one lady. We talked about illegal immigration and how sometimes illegal immigrants can be direct competition for black men in America. And her exact words were, first, on the one argument, she's telling me about systematic racism and systematic oppression. And in the very next light, when I was taking her to task about how sometimes illegal immigration can directly affect black men for jobs, her exact words were, well, niggas are lazy. Ain't that right, Keisha Marie Clark? Her exact words to me were, niggas are lazy, but she's wearing a Black Lives Matter t-shirt. All of a sudden, they love black men, but niggas are lazy. So, and those are her exact words. Like, that's an actual quote. So, I just find it funny that in the year 2020, when people all of a sudden have discovered black people in America, and again, it's like an episode of Different Stroke, people all of a sudden want to adopt black folks. But like I told you all in a previous broadcast, if you want to see how genuine white liberals are, if you want to see how genuine certain white folks are, all of a sudden they love black people, ask them if they're willing to take the collective wealth in America, if it's $10 trillion, siphon off half of that $10 trillion. Let's move it to black people. All of a sudden, you start seeing t-shirts getting taken off, Black Lives Matter, cardboard gets folded up, and folks don't want to talk about it anymore. So that's a problem that I have. And again, that's fake outrage, but real hatred, real visceral, just real vitriol, just real raw emotions. And I have a problem with that because, again, black women have proven more times than not, well, I'm not going to say that. Certain black women have proven more times than not to be the worst enemy of a black man than anybody else. For instance, remember Superhead Corinne Steffens, who wrote the book talking about how she sucked and slept with everybody in Hollywood and rappers and stuff like that, and she has no shame about embarrassing a black man, her ex-boyfriend, the actor Darius McCrary. You know him as Eddie Winslow from Family Matters. I believe it was an actor, Columbus Short, where she showed out on him in a hotel room. Now this woman has been in adult videos. She's written books about everything. And you know what's ironic? The one ex that she says that she truly respects is Bill Maher. Yes, that Bill Maher who's on HBO on the show Real Time with Bill Maher. So out of all the black men that she has slept with, laid up with, and done Lord knows what, and then tried to embarrass brothers, the one guy who she's never said anything negative about, she's never badmouthed, and in fact, out of her words is the one guy that she truly always respected was Bill Maher. So folks, do not tell me how you just love your black men so much, but yet you will cuss a black man out in the street. You will call the police on a black man. You will say little slick stuff to a black man. You will disrespect the black man. Except when it's police involved. Now all of a sudden, you love your black men. That's a bunch of bull jive, folks, and we're definitely not going for that. And those are some of the things that we're going to speak of. So now this goes into the presidential election. Again, we're not picking sides. People can choose who you want to choose for. You can vote, and let me say this, you have the right to vote who you want to vote for. Now, here's the next problem that I have. It seemed to me that people's blackness were questioned depending on who they voted for. Now, you had Joe Biden saying that you ain't black if you didn't vote for me. Maxine Waters. Now, let me get to Joe Biden. Again, not saying what you should or you shouldn't vote with Joe Biden, but I have to call a spade a spade. He's on the show with Charlemagne. If you can't figure out if you're going to vote for me and Trump, you ain't black. Now, the problem that I have with that is, Joe, would you say that to an LGBT person? Would you say that to a white person? Would you say that to a person of Hispanic descent? Would you say that to an Asian person? No. That's the problem with the disrespect that black people, and specifically black men, face. Which brings me, well, I'm still going to talk about Joe Biden in a second here. Now, people have the issue with Joe Biden, especially on the crime bill. Quickly, growing up in inner city, knowing how crack ravaged in the city, for that time. That's why it was passed for that time. It didn't age well, but for that time, it was passed for that time. But I do have an issue with you placing black people in one group that we're all supposed to think alike. No, we're not one big nigga. Okay, that's not how that works. Maxine Waters, who's been in office for how long in California, lives in a nice big house, but yet black men are suffering in her district and has a nerve to say she will never ever forgive a black man who voted for Donald Trump and that they're a disgrace to their family. I had a serious problem with Maxine Waters saying that. And the reason why, because when KKK and other white supremacists showed up in LA and they showed up at her office, who was there running off the KKK? Who was there defending her office? Black men. So you don't put black men in every category. You are free to vote for whoever you choose to vote for. That's a right that you have. The same way people say, well, if your ancestors died for the right to vote. Yeah, the right to vote for whoever you choose to vote for and why you choose to vote for them. Which goes to my next point, which I found really disgusting by Chelsea Handler, where 50 Cent had the thing going on with this white lady and she got up there on TV and said, I had to remind 50 Cent that he is a black man and he is not to vote for Donald Trump. And if he's willing to go on the air and renounce Donald Trump, because 50 Cent had expressed support for Trump versus Joe Biden, and for her to say that if he were to go on the news and speak ill of Trump and denounce Trump and repudiate Trump, she would consider sleeping with him again. What kind of plantation buck talk is that? That is something straight off the damn plantation. And the fact that there was not more outrage by that bothers me. For that woman to get up there on TV and say, I had to remind 50 Cent, and this is a man who grew up in the ghetto of Southside Jamaica, Queens, who grew up with the Supremes, and we're talking that crack era at that time. I feel a little bit older than me, but that crack era time, in the heart of it, in New York City, in Queens, with those dudes, the Pappy Masons and the Supreme teams, and all them dudes. 50 grew up in that. The man was shot all those times, living that hustler's life. However you feel about 50 and some of his actions and the immaturity and behavior, that is still a black man who came from nothing to reach the pinnacle in his profession and has tackled other genres. His TV shows and Vitamin Water. So however you feel about 50 Cent, the man is a true success story. And for that white lady to get up there and say that she had to remind 50 Cent that he is black, who the hell are you to tell a black man who he should vote for, to remind him that his vote is only based on the color of his skin? That is a level of racism, and I felt that was so disgusting, and why there was no outrage behind it, I find it totally awful. And for you brothers out there, for those of you who can't wait to get down with the squirrel, this is what these white ladies think of you. A big black buck. A big black thing just to sleep with. That's all you are, is a fad. It's something to do. It's something to rebel against your family on. That's all it is. Some of you brothers probably later with some white girls doing these protests and stuff like that. But even though, again, she's not past you any type of resources, she just giving you some nookie. I had a serious issue with that. I felt it was disgusting, and she should have been content by that. But the problem is, for a black man in America, his weakness is a white woman. Which, hey, if you love the squirrel, I'm not knocking your hustle. Hey, you love who you love. But for her to make those comments and to say, if he was to denounce Trump, she would consider sleeping with him again. That is sick. That is sick. That is sick, and that is something literally from the plantation. And my issue with 50 Cent, now I had to call 50 to task. The same way you come at everybody's neck, you know, Ja Rules and Rick Ross, and you sued one girl because she owed you some money. I didn't see the response from 50 Cent like I thought I would get against this lady. Now, you have all the energy in the world for black folks, but you had no energy for this lady. And in fact, you made a joke on your Instagram or Twitter account, kind of trolling and being funny. I needed that same energy for Chelsea that you have for everybody else, because again, she is putting you in your buck place. All she sees you is one big black buck. Again, this is what I call the fake love, the fake outrage, and the real vitriol for black men. Because probably Chelsea Handler's probably one of the ones that was probably out there protesting, holding a little BS Black Lives Matter flag, and I can get on Black Lives Matter on another broadcast, but a Black Lives Matter flag probably was holding up a little black fist. And now that 50 is a grown man who's free to vote for who he wants to vote for, and you reduce it to say, I had to remind him that he's black, and if you denounce this man, I will consider sleeping with him again. That's awful, and I don't know why she didn't receive more outrage. Black men, we are allowed to think the same. I've had plenty of conversations with black Republicans. We can talk, at least if we're talking about business, I don't have a problem with that. I have had many conversations with far left-leaning Democrats. I don't have a problem with that. But to say that you're a black man and I'm a black man and we're all supposed to think the same, which means as black people we are free of any outside thought, which means we are still on the plantation and we should think the same, that's a problem. Black men don't have any shame about thinking what you want to think, about thinking outside the box and doing what's best for you. Again, I have spoken to Republicans about business, and I don't have a problem with that. We can think different ideology. I'm a, quote, Christian, so to speak. I have gotten into good discussion with Muslims. And again, we might not agree, and we can agree to disagree, but we can find a happy middle ground as to what is best. But it just seems that, the attacks from Maxine Waters, the Bidens, the Chelsea Handlers, telling black men what they should and who they shouldn't vote for, and that somehow negates their blackness? Really? But again, we love our black men come July during the original protest over George Floyd. That turned out to be one big lie. That's our issue with that, is we are not one total monolithic group where we think the same and every black man in America thinks the same. Again, you wouldn't dare say that to a white man, you wouldn't dare say that to an Asian, you wouldn't say it to a Jew, and you would not say it to a damn Hispanic. But you have the gall, the audacity, and the temerity to say it to a black man in America that he should vote for the person that we put in front of him. No, we're free. Yes, we's free. We have our independent thought, and we have a right to vote for whoever we want to vote for. It is not on you to tell us who we should vote for, and now we're no longer black. So let me see if I get this straight. You're a black man when you shot and killed by the police, but if you choose to vote differently than what I want you to vote, all of a sudden you ain't black. It's a travesty as a black man, quotes, shot and killed by the police, but because if you choose to exercise a different political route, now all of a sudden you're a disgrace to your family, even though black men are suffering under your watch and they're suffering in your district while you're living in a $6 million house. This is why I'm so irritated by that. Again, not caring about who won, not caring about who lost, but it's just this treatment of black men. Even, people are trying to come at black men because they chose to vote for Donald Trump. Again, that's not my place to say who people should vote for. That's your vote, and you have a right to cast your vote. Well, the support of black men went up, exponentially. Yeah, it went up. It happens. You have the right to vote for who you want to vote for. And also, not even counting stuff in the mail, some of the ballots that I received. This election is an election for our lives depend on it. And I'm looking at, damn near really trying to stoke the fires of emotion. I'm the type of person, the older I get, when I look at election and candidates, what are you going to do that's going to benefit my people? That's what I can look at. Here is, I think, is the ultimate slap in the face to black men. Not necessarily what you're going to do for black men, not things to improve their life, none of that. You put a commercial on, you have women strippers, get to the polls where you have women on a commercial shaking their ass, and that is their way to get black men to get to the polls. Now, whoever thought of that idea, you need to fall off the sidewalk and fall on your face. And that's me being nice. You need to trip going up the sidewalk and fall dead on your face. You thought it was a good idea to put a commercial on to show strippers to get, and we know who it was designed for, so we're not gonna play dumb. You put a bunch of black women naked on TV to shake their ass to get people's attention. Again, it was aimed at black men to get out there and vote. Are you serious? Not necessarily what you're going to do for the black man for the vote. None of that. Get out there and vote. So the way to draw black men in is not what you're going to do for them, not what they're going to get for the vote, but to shake their ass and to get out there and vote. I was stunned when I saw that commercial. And that was a slap in the face. Now I tell you, but that was a spit in the face, because what they said in that commercial, black men, you don't have a brain of your own, you all think the same, and all you are hypersexualized, which is pretty much that narrative has been from like the 1970s after so-called integration, and the big black man was the menace and raping the women and stuff like that. So as black men, all we are is over-sexualized or hyper-sexualized men where we only live with our penises and and not with our brain, hence the black penis. And I have a serious problem with that. I, as a black man in America, I was truly insulted by that commercial where the way to try to get black men to the polls is by putting a stripper in front of them, not talking about real issues like jobs that affects black men in America. In most major cities in America, how the black men are unemployed. Or as the one lady told me, she loves black men, but niggas are lazy. So none of those real issues like in Maxine Waters' district, where black men are unemployed, or other major cities in America, black men are unemployed. But guess what? We can put a stripper in your face and tell you to go to the polls, but we're not going to tell you what you're going to get for that vote. That's insulting. That's treating us, again, like hypersexualized or sexually undisciplined men, and we're just out here, and the only thing that can move us is sex. Chelsea Handler just told 50 Cent, if you denounce Trump, I'm going to give you some sex. So in the mainstream, black men in the year 2020 are still seen as hypersexualized beasts that we have no control over our sexual drives. That's insulting. That's degrading. That's disgusting. And I'm going to call my black men. We need to start checking some of that nonsense. I know some of us love to swirl. We love anything other than non-black women, which is absurd. We love the whole exotic thing. But these people have truly showed their tail to us, how they actually view us as big, bad, burly, hypersexualized things, and we can control them with sex. That's it. That's plantation talk. We can control these black men with sex. And I was taken aback by that. I'm insulted by that. I don't understand why more people weren't insulted by that. But my brothers, it's up to us to support one another. It's not even about other fools just really at this point because they told us how they felt. And especially to try to gain votes, unquote, on our back. And now you start seeing the hatred that black men receive because they chose to vote for Donald Trump, where you have your right to vote for everyone to vote for, but nobody is attacking Asians, nobody is attacking Hispanics, nobody is attacking LGBT. It's only black men being attacked for exercising their right to vote for who they want to vote for. So the argument is vote, but vote for the candidate that we want you to vote for. And brothers, we're not going to stand for that. We are amazing. We are unique. We make the world go round. That's just the bottom line. And we're not going to apologize for it. Again, you chose to vote for Trump. You chose to vote for Biden. That is your choice. It's not my place to tell you who you should vote for. You went to the polls. You weighed the facts. You looked at the candidate. You look at their histories. Whatever metric you use to have your candidate and it goes to the polls, that is your God-given right and your God-given choice. And the fact that black men, again, just 3, 4, 5 months ago, people had all this sympathy for black men. Oh my God, they're killing black men in the streets, and social injustice and racial injustice and oppressive system and a racist system. But yet now, months later, because black men are not doing what you wanted them to do. Now all of a sudden it's F black men, black women save the day, black women save the day again, and now black men are getting all the vitriol and all the hatred for exercising their vote how they wanted to end their vote. That's why I said fake outrage, real hatred, real vitriol towards black men. And I'm bothered by that. It's disgusting by that. And again, when you're a strong black man, when you ain't taking no mess, all of a sudden again, you're called narcissist, you're called misogynistic, it's called toxic masculinity. So when you're a brother, you show yourself and you're not taking any mess, these are what the useless black feminists call you. And yes, I said it again, useless black feminists. And if any of you listening, again, I'm gonna call you again a useless black feminist. And I find it funny how black men, we have to get put in all these labels and categories, but unless we're crying on TV, switching and snapping, wearing dresses, feminized, that's okay. So we're over-sexualized on one hand by putting strippers in our face, but then what you see on the mainstream are effeminine, dainty dudes. That's okay. So, nah, damn it. We're tired of it. So if that makes me narcissistic, if that makes me misogynistic for speaking up on the disrespect that black men face every day in America, including from a certain segment of black women, then that'll be so be it. But guess what? I feel we should put an end to this crap. And we have every right to. And that's why I decided to do this broadcast about the disrespect that black men have been facing in this country. We will continue to do what we have to do in order to survive and in order to provide for our families. If you ask most black folks, and then white liberals be damned, they want police in their areas because they understand how important police are. And to just put these narratives on black people, again, vote, 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 vote. The only thing is vote. We want you to vote. We want you to vote. We want you to vote. What y'all should have put in there was vote for the candidate that we want you to vote for. That's the problem that I have with it. And we're not playing that game anymore. No, we're not. So some of you sisters out there, you useless ass feminists who come with the disrespect towards it and will cuss us out in the street in a heartbeat, but yet will have white man worship. We're not doing that anymore. So again, black men, they have showed you your true colors. We were the flavor of the month come June and July during the summer months. Okay, the flavor of the month. You saw how quickly you went from people really not caring about you to all of a sudden they discover black people, black men, to because of a presidential election. Look at some of the articles, look at some of the Instagram accounts, look at some of the Twitter accounts about some of the nasty things that's being said about black men in America for exercising their right to vote for whoever they choose to vote for. So that's going to cover this broadcast. This is all we had to say. So this is Chin Check Radio, signing off until the next time.